Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for another awesome webinar in our Recruiting Daily educational webinar series. Today we are going to be talking about budget assessments and the fact that William Tincup thinks that a lot of you are lying about yours. So get ready, we're going to jump in pretty soon. It's going to be awesome. As always, housekeeping, listen only mode. So your control panel there on the right, you can hear us, we cannot hear you. So what you're going to do is utilize the control panel to ask questions as we go through the presentation. Don't worry though, we are recording, so if there's anything that you missed, or if you can't stick around for the whole thing, no worries. We will have a copy of the presentation and recording out to you within about 24 hours, so don't stress. Again, control panel, ask questions, and we'll get the recording to you shortly. And as always, we will be live on Twitter with hashtag #RDaily, so follow along there as well. And we're going to keep this simple and just kind of jump right into it. And William is going to hop into the results of a survey we did a while back, asking the audience about their budget for tech assessments. So we're just going to kind of roll through the questions and the results and see what he has to say about everything. So William, I'm throwing it over to you.
As you should, as you should. Thank you all for showing up today. We're probably not going to take the whole hour. I want to give some people, it's Monday, give some people some time back in their schedule. But I first want to apologize for some of the language that we used in kind of marketing this event. I actually don't think that everyone's a liar, although I am fairly cynical and pessimistic occasionally. I think it's more that we don't know and we haven't agreed. And but you know, in today's marketplace, if you put out vanilla content, you get vanilla responses. So apologies. You know, I just want to kind of talk openly and be honest about that. Sometimes you have to be a little bit over the top just to get people to pay attention to something. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's something I've struggled with for a long time, and I want to get your takes on it as well. So again, as Lex has already kind of dug in and said, ask questions. I really do mean that. Webinars, podcasts, fireside chats, you know, they're always better when they're kind of a two-way. When somebody disagrees vehemently, disagrees, or takes a different stance that maybe we hadn't thought of. But I'll tell you where this comes from, and it's about a 20-year-old journey, 20-year-old story for me. In the late 90s, I ran a web development firm, and web development back in the late 90s was essentially the beginning of the web. The beginning of the web development, and so it was not things that were known, and you know, you had to explain to people, hey, you need to be on the web. It's it's an important thing. Like it sounds so silly now, but I remember sales calls, you know, talking to grown, you know, women and men about the web. It's the big thing. It's the next big thing. It's going to solve all your problems. And in building a design shop, creative was actually relatively easy to source because ad agencies had had kind of a dip in revenue, and finding great graphic designers wasn't difficult. Finding writers for content, journalists, wasn't that difficult at the time. The hard, most difficult positions to find in staffing a web development or an interactive shop, as they'd like to call themselves, was actually the developers, the people that developed technology. And on the back end, and technology changes, it's changed so many times, it's actually even hard for people that keep up with it full time to keep up with it. That's how often it changes. So I was recruiting. I went around all the career fairs and did the post on Monster and Career Builder and Dice and whatever else I placed, and did that regular rigmarole. Found about 1,000 candidates. And what I was looking for, and again, try not to laugh too hard at this, but what I was looking for was a woman or a man who could hand code HTML. So let that set in for a moment. what I desperately needed, okay, desperately, like projects were getting choked down because we didn't have this position staffed well enough. I needed a person to hand code HTML, something I'm pretty sure my 8-year-old son could do today, right? If I really challenged, his name's Van Allis. If I really challenged Van Allis, I'm pretty sure he could hand code a website with HTML today. And so anyhow, I'm searching for this person. I'm scouring the planet. And one of the things I realized, not being a technical person, I have 3 degrees, 2 of them in history, art history, Native American history, and in business. Not being technical, right? So one of the things I realized even at the time is that technical talent, they use a lot of this lingo, these buzzwords and different coding languages and things like that. And one of the things you can't really decipher being a non-technical person is what's the breadth and depth of that experience. So take something like today, like Apache, Ajax. Something that's being commonly used pretty much in a lot of development projects. When someone says Ajax on their website or on their LinkedIn profile, let's just use New Tech or Resume or wherever they put their profile, GitHub, Stack Overflow, whatever, and they put that they're seasoned expert, whatever, in Ajax. What does that actually mean, right? Like, what is it? What is the breadth and depth of that? Does that mean that you've worked at Expedia for 17 years and you've done nothing but Expedia's Ajax work? Okay, that would be kind of a one project, but fairly deep in one project. Or does that mean that you've worked on 6,000 different Ajax projects, but not really deep? Kind of really thinly worked in Ajax, but not really deep in that particular coding language. So getting back to my story about HTML, I'm going through these resumes and I'm more confused than not. And so I'm going through them and I'm reading them with Perl, ASP, PHP, C++. I'll throw in a Cobalt just for fun, just for giggles. And I'm going through there, I'm reading, and I'm trying, I'm a relatively intelligent person. I want to put an asterisk next to that when I say relatively, because I could not, from resume to resume, figure out like which one was the better candidate. I'm looking for a gal or a guy that can hand code HTML. That's what I need. All this other stuff, that's what, while interesting and compelling, that's not what I needed. I needed something very specific, and I needed them to be really good at it. So I go around, like I said, all the career fairs, and finally I meet this one cat, and I really like him. Actually, I really like him, and I go deep. I'm like, okay, explain to me HTML as if I don't know it, even though I do. Tell me everything you know about HTML. And if we just had a pencil and a piece of paper, let's see if you can kind of code this. And it's simple stuff. Bold this, italics this, whatever. Really simple stuff. Because it was 20 years ago. Of course, it was simple. So he does it. We're at Starbucks. He does the bit, and I just like the guy. I think he'd be a good fit at the company. Everything kind of gels. I call his references. I did all the typical things a sourcing, hiring manager, recruiter would do, right? So, and again, 1999, I offered him $75,000 to, again, the job, hand code HTML. He calls me back, I don't know, 2 weeks later. He says, Will, I love you. I would really like to work with your firm just because I think just working with you would be a lot of fun. Evidently, I'm relatively inappropriate and fun to work with. And So he goes, but I got another job offer. And I know that your budget, I'm at the top end of your budget, and I don't want to offend you and I want to be friends forever. But another company has offered me $85,000 to hand code HTML. And I went to our board actually, because at the time I'm like, I'm struggling just to find this person. Now I've found someone. It's 10K more. 10K ain't gonna kill us. Not having the person there and the project running really far behind, that's actually going to kill us. I got to have this guy. Went to the board and I said no. So he and I are still friends. We're on Facebook together. We still joke about the height of the .com era. I think you could get someone to hand code HTML today for about $22,000. In India, probably less than that. But it really started this process for me. This quandary of, if someone says that they can write, okay, so again, my educational background. If someone tells me that they can write and they submit, something, a blog article or a treatise, whatever, they submit something to me, I can pretty much tell whether or not they can write or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have the gift of being able to look at their stuff and go, these are run-on sentences. you either didn't care or you're too stupid to grammar and spell check. Okay, so you can't have the job. Again, if someone says that they're great at public speaking or great at PR, they're great at HR. Someone that's easily comes right out of college, comes out of Texas A&M, and says that he or she is really good at HR. I can pretty much sniff that out in less than 10 minutes. What's difficult for me, and I think it's for more people in our industry than we talk about, and that's the other part of this and why I thought it'd be good for a good discussion, is technical talents. We all know software runs the world. We all know that hardware and software both are very important to the future of the entire planet and our history. Having people, engineers, software engineers, technical talent around, and to have the ability to suss through the pretenders, right? To be able to really identify who's a contender and who's a pretender here. And it gets down into very specific things really fast. Another story from those days when I owned a web development agency, I hired my first network engineer, and basically his job was to keep us up. And he's a nice guy, young guy, young guy, but he knew networking really well. And he would have to explain stuff to me pretty much on a daily basis. And like, I remember going to like Best Buy and Fry's and some of these computer stores, literally, and him walking down aisles explaining like what things are. Like, okay, see that? Yeah, that's Cat 4. Okay, here's why we need Cat 4. We have to take Cat 4 and run it from the server to the computer so that people have the internet. And I'm not stupid, but so much of it was new and so much of it was nuanced intelligence, nuanced experience. So fast forward to what we deal with today. When we source people, technical talent in particular, we have hiring managers and we have recruiters. These are the folks that are generally involved in the hiring of this technical talent. How do they determine the breadth and depth of that experience? How do they determine who's a good fit? Who actually, it's really easy to put, again, PHP. It's really easy to put PHP on your resume. But Do you actually know PHP? You know, Perl, an old language. You know, do you actually know Perl? And if you do, what's the breadth and depth of that knowledge? And how do you attest, assess a scenario? How do you get to the point of saying contender, pretender? Okay, and that's what today's all about. And so I'll stop reminiscing about some of the old days and some of the fun things that I laugh about. But really, I think this is a problem today. I think it's going to be even more of a problem tomorrow and going forward because it's going to get even more nuanced. The language and the expertise is going to be more nuanced, and we're going to have to figure out better ways to suss out who really knows what. And when I mean really, I mean, you know, we all have kind of an inflated view of self. You know, I think Freud did a pretty good job, you know, speaking about this, that we all see ourselves as a little bit grander than we really are, right? And we all put on kind of a better face than we really have. And so we do that in work. We do that with this technical talents that we have. So I don't like to start with okay, this person's completely lying. They're completely a fraud, and they're just literally trying to steal from us. I don't start there. I have I have gotten there occasionally, but we don't need to get into that. But I don't start there. I usually start with they probably think they know more about this than they do. Okay, so let's test that. Or they might have a really aggressive and positive view of themselves, which by and large, I don't hate. I'd rather people have a positive view of themselves. But when it comes down to filling a job, I want to know, can you do the job, the specific job, using the specific skills and languages and technical traits? Can you do that job? Not the other jobs, but that job. Contender, pretender, right? So we're really trying to suss that out. So one of the questions that we asked is, okay, well, let's see if this is more of a thing on the corporate side or on the staffing side. And it validated for me. And again, this is all subject. Stats is one of these things that it really is it is really an art form. And when I say art form, it means that you can get out of it what you want to get out of it. So standing in front of a Monet, what did you get out of that? Well, standing in front of this, bar graph, what are you going to get out of that? What I get out of that is that corporate views the hiring of technical talent in a way that's different than staffing. And let me explain. Staffing, it used to be, and to some degree it still is, what the Brits call bums in chairs, right? That's the idea, is that you need a person, I need to get you a person, and what speed, and what price, and what quality can I get you that person, that bum in the seat? Okay, so do they care as much about the quality of the technical talent as someone on the corporate side? My gut would tell me no, they don't. Because if the person doesn't work out, they'll just fill it again. Whereas with a corporate environment, you've got onboarding, you've got training, you've got all kinds of cultural and team stuff. And so you're going to care a little bit more. And that's what slide number 1 says, is as a corporate recruiter, you're just going to care a bit more about the fit. Now, we still haven't gotten to how do you solve for the fit. We will here in a couple of minutes. Let's take a look at slide 2, Lex. So this question was trying to get at when someone says pre-hire. right? Pre-hire. We're going to take this person through a gauntlet. And what does that gauntlet look like? Is it a series of assessments? Is it a skills testing, right? So we can have some skills testing things over here. We could have a battery of assessments here. We could have a peer review, which is a really interesting way to do things where you have someone that's has that talent evaluating the person that says they have that talent, right? That's an interesting thing to look at. And yet another thing that people talk about and use is scenarios. So in kind of mixing some of those things together, what if you were to build this? How would you build it? And then you're kind of working through what is their technical process, but you're also working through the logic. Like I would build it this first, and then this first, I'd test it this way. I'd have so and so look at this. You're in a scenario. You're pulling them through something just more than just a skill. And so one of the things we were trying to drive at is does the community use these words synonymously? Like, do they, when we say technical screening or assessments or skill testing, do people think of that's all the same? And a third of the people did, which is a bit shocking when it gets right down to it, because they're absolutely not the same. A battery of assessments versus skill testing versus peer review versus scenarios, they're absolutely different. They're all different. And so the folks that answer different are correct. And we're noticing we're not saying one's more accurate or better than another yet. All we're saying is that are people using these things synonymously? So when we're trying to evaluate talent, the breadth and depth and the contender versus a pretender, are people using these words in a way that essentially makes them equal? We know they're not, but does the community? And so there's some confusion. And what this slide says to me, again, Monet, Manet, Cezanne, pick your favorite artist. What this says to me is that third is really, really, really important to convince them because they're going to continue to make bad or poor hiring choices because they're not using the right tools. And because they're thinking the tools are the same. Yeah, see, we got some skills testing. We'll just go over here to this firm, and they got some testing, and okay, that's it. And the person tested out at an 80 level. Okay, that's perfect. Yep, hired. Give them an offer letter. So depending on what you want the candidate to go through, that candidate experience, I think you can do all of these. Especially for certain technical positions where you really need to know. It's critical for you to make the right decision. I actually think there's a place for a lot of these things to coexist, as long as you convey why they're important to the candidate. Hey, we're going to take you through a procession because what we want to learn is your breadth and depth. Okay, what we want to learn is we want to learn more about when you say you know this, how much and how deep and how well do you know it? And you shouldn't fear that. You shouldn't think twice about that. But we're going to take you through a battery of these types of tests. I actually think that's a good candidate experience because it shows that it's serious. And I think technical hiring is pretty serious. And I think that you can make mistakes in corporations in hiring, but I think we're getting to a point where it's harder to make. It's more expensive to make technical mistakes. So let me say that in English. If you make a mistake at hiring a receptionist, he or she, very important position because it is your employer brand's first person that people see when you get off the elevator. Very important position. Not downplaying that at all. But if you make a mistake, and a technical developer or an architect, a technical architect, they can put you lines of code behind every day that they're not there. Lines of code that you might not be able to ever make up. Whereas if the receptionist, if you make a bad hire there, again, he or she, you can recover from that. And so I think that that is becoming more and more important to companies. That technical debt, the technical wherewithal to have the right people in the right places at the right time doing the right things is becoming more important, which means that we need to have more rigor and better rigor in front of the hiring process. So let's take a look at, again, questions. Y'all, this is you can tell this is a passion for me. You can tell where it came from. Um, I, I'm definitely am not going to tell you that I have all the answers. But if you have any questions, either during or after, please pepper me with them because it'll just get me to think more about this. Question 3. What's your current budget for technical assessments? All right, so again, draw your eye to 2 places. The first being Kelly Green, 0, and the very bottom one, Fuchsia, I don't know. Okay, the totality of those two is over 50%. It's closer to 60. Okay, what in the hell is going on in technical hiring when we don't know? Either it's 0 problem, like that. That should be a big giant red flag. Like if if we're not doing anything, how in the world are we sourcing the right talent? How are we asking them the questions that need to be asked? Again, how are we skill testing, assessing, and peer reviewing and scenario? How are we doing any of that for no money? That's insane. That one to me, when I actually, I went back and forth with Lex on that. I'm like, are you sure? Of course, doubting Thomas. That can't be right. Are you sure? And yeah, it is sure. It really is. It means that people don't value the technical assessment, and that is insane. And we got to change it. So everyone listening to this call, we've got to figure out a way to get it in people's minds that you can't have a 0 there. We're going to have to agree on what it is and what the gauntlet needs to be, and by position, and how you want to create a good candidate experience whilst doing those things. All those things are definitely future problems, but the first problem is we need a budget. So one of the calls that I would make, today is, we need to talk with everybody in the department, everybody at the company. When we're hiring technical talent, again, it is not hiring the receptionist. No offense to the receptionist, but in hiring technical talent, we've got to really suss out the contenders and pretenders, because a pretender does nothing for you. It literally steals from you. And so we want to make sure we get the contenders in there, and they have to be the people that have the right skill set for the job that you have. And it doesn't matter how technical they are, or how or how much they could learn. It's, do they know what you need them to know right now? And how do we learn that? So the rest of the stuff in the middle is interesting. I think, cutting that by size of company, it gets even more interesting. Larger companies, more technical hires, your Apples and Oracles and Googles of the world. Shocking, they're spending more of this because they don't want to make mistakes, and they value technical hiring in a way that other folks don't. But the fuchsia and the green, that's the part, that's the story right there. Because if you don't know, An obvious question is, well, why don't you know? Like, what happened? Did you fall on your head? Like, where did it go wrong for you that you don't know? Because it's really easy to ask. It's really easy to ask your boss and ask your boss's boss and going up the chain, hey, what are we spending here? We're saying this position is hard, and it's hard to find. We're saying it's an expensive position, and they don't make a whole lot of them. What are we doing to make sure that we hire the right people? And what kind of budget are we putting aside? I don't, I don't think that that's a bad question. In fact, I think it's a dereliction of duty to not ask the question, dare I say. All right, so that's Q3. Let's go on to Q4. See what we got here. So, are you satisfied with your budget for technical assessments? So, let's go back to the last slide, just real quick. Fuchsia and green, over 50%. Okay, is either zero or they don't know. So either zero or don't know makes for at least 50%. Now, slide 4. And these people are satisfied with their budget for technical assessments. So, I kind of typically, go kind of harsh here with you're either crazy, stoned, drunk, dumb, something. There's something holding you back. I don't know what it is, but you can't be satisfied with your budget for technical assessments if it's zero or if you don't know. You can't be. You just can't be. And I don't want to overblow like, oh my God, technical positions are the most important ever. Well, cardiac thoracic surgeons, they're, they're kind of important positions to fill as well. Um, there's plenty of positions that are mission critical. But if you look at what we're hiring, what the world is producing of technical talent, what we're hiring in technical talent, there's far more people that are being hired for their technical skills. And if we're not assessing them, we're going to wake up with a firm full of pretenders. And it'll be our fault. It'll be our fault because we didn't take them through a gauntlet. We didn't take them through a rigor. Like if we were hiring I think it's cardiothoracic surgeon. I should know. I had both my lungs collapse at one point, so I should know. But if we're hiring that gal or that guy, well, I'm sure there's a battery of tests. I'm pretty sure that they had to, pass a bunch of tests, go to a bunch of school. Like, yeah, it's pretty easy to figure out, how many times that they've had lawsuits filed against them or people die on the table. Like, it's pretty easy to find out whether or not that gal or guy is pretty good at their job. It's not as easy, and that's the point. When someone says that they have a technical skill, you almost have to take them at their word. And the danger of taking them at their word is this position is becoming more and more critical to your company. And whether or not that position lies in IT or anywhere in the organization. I mean, you have technical positions all over now. You have technical positions in marketing and HR and in sales and ops. So it's not just for IT folks, the propeller heads of the organization. This is all technical positions that you're hiring for. We need to do a better job. Like this slide tells me that people like took the day off when they answered this because there's no way you can be happy with a budget of zero, especially with some positions that are this important. It just can't be. So I look at it and I see that. Be interesting to see if you see something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and take a look at question 5. Okay. Well, there is hope, thank God. The Kelly Green is the highest, which is good. I almost disregard the Q4 and throw that out like, okay, they took the day off, they took that question off. Where they want to see increases, that I like. They want to see more money being spent. That I'm happy there. I would love for that to be further down in the 20 to 50 or 50 to 100, where people start to kind of get it, like, oh my God, this is a real problem, and we need to apply a better process, more refined and rigorous. I keep using that word, but rigorous process where we take people through, again, my words, a gauntlet to get to the point of pretender contender. I gotta know before I make the recommendation, before I put an offer letter together, before I do any of those things, or even before I put them in front of the hiring manager, I have to know, is this person a contender, a real contender? And so I think that spending more money on the front end, it's well worth it to cut out fraud, bloated egos, people that just lie or say that they know something and they don't. And I think it's really easy to lie in technical terms. It's easier to lie there than almost any other place that you're hiring for, because the other things, they're easier to vet, as we talked about before. So I'm happy that people want to increase. This could have this could have gone the other way, where no one wants to increase anything. Everything's happy, and it's more of a slide 4. Like, nope, we're happy, don't need to increase. Que sera, sera. So I am happy. I wish the increase was higher. So personally, I see it as a deeper problem, and I wish people thought of it as a deeper problem, and I wish that they would want the percentage to be higher. All right, so let's take a look at slide 6. So this is kind of interesting, and we'll go through each of these because I'm perplexed in some ways. So PPM, per employee per month, is how most HR software is sold. You buy your payroll system, your performance management system, your ATS, this, that, the other. Generally, it's a model that's been around for 100 years, and it's how many employees do you have or have using the system, and there's a number, and it's that number per month per employee. All right. Pretty easy model to kind of follow, easy model to for software companies to understand and to build revenue models around. The per recruiter seat license is it's how a lot of software that's more ATS, more TA technology. Let's just call it what it is. So if you're buying sourcing technology and CRM technology and ATS technology and some pre-hire technology, you see this a lot where it's like, well, we don't need to talk about per all the employees. We have 12 recruiters, and all 12 recruiters needs a license, and that license costs X number of dollars per month. It's LinkedIn does this with their LinkedIn recruiter product. So that's kind of normal, and I think that's why that's the highest, is because we're asking pre-hire assessment questions, and a large majority of the audience is going to be recruiters, sourcers, hiring managers, and so that's probably what they're accustomed to. The one the yellow, the one that kind of tripped me up a little bit is per interview completed. I'll tell you why this really kind of tripped me out a little bit. It's counterintuitive because it sounds like a good idea. I interview 10 people, and I only want to pay for the 10 people I put through the gauntlet. Okay, so I've got the gauntlet. We've designed the gauntlet. We've purchased the gauntlet from single vendors or multiple vendors, and here's the gauntlet. And I'm only going to have 5 people. I've already vetted everybody else. I'm going to have 5 people to go through it. And 5 people go through it, and you pay for that. All right, done. The thing is what if you missed? Like it's trying to make the cost small. Okay, so you're basically saying, okay, we need to get this down to a small number, or it's going to cost a fortune, right? It's just going to cost a fortune. Oh my God, it's going to cost through our nose. We're going to pay for this. So we need to get it down to a small number, which means that you ding people out. Oh, they didn't go to Harvard. Oh, they're not a part of, so-and-so group. Oh, they live in this place. Like all the reasons, biases and otherwise, all the reasons that we knock people out of the recruiting process. But we do that because we're trying to get to a small number. So that we can get to a small number, so because then we don't want it to cost us an arm and a leg. And so I think this is actually counter to the interest of the business. When I look at that and say, I think you should look at as many people as possible. Like, why are we making the aperture small? Why not make the aperture a little bit bigger, if not wide open, and let people go through it? And thus, those contenders come out the other side. Now, if we did that and it was on a per interview, gauntlet, completed, we would be paying through the nose. It would terrify us on the cost. But if we didn't pay that way, and we said, yeah, you know what, let's do unlimited, and let's actually open this up and let people go through and do skill testing, ding, skill assessments, ding, peer review, ding, scenarios, ding, and then at the end of that gauntlet, it's really clear who's a pretender and who's a contender. So I don't like the yellow personally. I don't like the per because I think it's counter to the interest of the business. I think it drives you to get a fewer number of people, which means you make more arbitrary decisions on who shouldn't be in the process, probably using biases. No one wants to talk like that because, we're all perfect. But, this is where, minority candidates get knocked out, women candidates get knocked out, people that don't have a fluent English accent get kicked out. And again, no one's going to speak like that because no one wants to talk about biases in real terms. But I think in the rush to get to a small number, I think we use all kinds of tactics, some of which we're not proud of, to get to a small number. So I don't like the yellow. And I think as we're talking about it, I don't think that the PEPM model, I think it works for a lot of things in HR and recruiting, but I think that the per recruiter, like maybe what this should be is per recruiter and unlimited or something like that. Some type of cadre that kind of lets per recruiter, let all your recruiters do it and let them set up their gauntlets. So something like that is kind of what I'm thinking. And Lex, what's next? So as you've traveled through this, it's kind of funny, right? As you've traveled through this, they're happy with their number. They're not spending any money. and then you ask a question, what do you think the reasonable price for this is? And they pick the absolute lowest number known to man, right? I did like the blue, the between 150 and 200. I think that's a little bit more realistic. Again, you have to decide, is this important or is this not? This is a really, really thoughtful discussion between sourcer, hiring manager, recruiter, and probably executive. Is this an important position? And if it is, you should spend more money. making sure you make the right hire. You know, the two kind of should go hand in hand. If you really believe in your heart of hearts that this is an important position, then you should do whatever it takes to make sure that you make the right decision and cull that pretender and contender. So $150, is that really? I mean, no offense to anybody, you can't get a good bottle of scotch for $150. So like, what are you really doing there? And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I'm just, it's either important or it's not. And that's just kind of, that's how life, this, at least as it's explained to me, it either is or it isn't. If it is important, spend more money. Make sure you do the right thing and get the right gal or guy in the job and the right contender. If it isn't important, then maybe that number's right. But you've made that decision. You've you know, with thought, you've made the decision. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. It's a network engineer. If our network's down, you know what? It's not that big a deal. We don't really need to test their skills that much. And don't spend money on it. I mean, how much money do you spend on assessing your marketing coordinator? None. How much do you spend on your sales operations position? None. So it's either important or it's not. My argument, my 20-year-old argument with myself is that it is important and you should treat it so, and you should spend more money on it. And with that, I guess we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions.
We had the one more question about fraud, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to cover that or if you basically just did.
Yeah, I think this happens more on the staffing side, Lex. I think that because staffing has to move quicker and cheaper, I think fraud happens there more frequently. And I think everyone involved in that is at peace with that, the level of fraud. I don't think it happens as much on the corporate side. But, would putting people through a gauntlet, and again, you can create your own gauntlet, your own process, your own candidate experience. You can do all those things, but more rigor around technical hiring. I think this answer validates that. It validates and says, yeah, you should. You should absolutely do it, because it does get to the pretender and contender question pretty quickly. So yeah, I think that fraud for me, I think it happens more in staffing, less in corporate, and anything you can do to apply more rigor in technical hiring, the better. I mean, almost to the point of being extremely rigorous. Like, think of the most rigorous hiring that you could possibly ever do, and then walk backwards from that. And that's what we should be doing with all technical hiring. Well, I think most people, they were listening because they were curious about the topic and curious about my, issues with said things. And again, getting back to the language we use to market this thing, yeah, I don't think you're lying. That was just language used to market, a bit, something that I'm passionate about. So if I've offended anybody, wasn't my intent. My intent was to get people to care about technical hiring as much as I do. And so, Lex, do we have any questions?
No, sir, we are all set.
I love it, because you know what the best part about this is? we get to give the audience 10 minutes of their life back. That's the beauty of this, is now they get 10 minutes to go and do whatever they want, because this thing is going to end 10 minutes early. Thanks to everybody that showed up today. I appreciate you. Thanks to everyone that registered and all that other stuff. I absolutely appreciate you. And if you have questions offline, just shoot me a question. I'd love to point you in the direction of some solutions out there that I know of that are great. Maybe even help you design a process that's a bit more rigorous. It is absolutely a passion of mine. So there you go. William Tincup. Peace.